Well, Canada's second biggest port, Montreal, continues to be the center point of an ongoing labor standoff with nearly 1,200 workers participating in a one-day strike. Longshore workers at the Port of Montreal are set to walk off the job later this morning. The union representing them saying the aim is to increase the pressure on management as talks remain at a standstill. The latest job action follows an ongoing strike against overtime shifts that began 2 weeks ago. A 3-day strike at 2 terminals ended earlier this month. Let's bring in Ian Lee, a business analyst from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian, thank you as always for joining us.
My pleasure, Roger.
This is just a one-day strike. It's a Sunday, but do Sundays exist at the port, or are they always working? Is this a normal busy day?
The ports are absolutely critical to the supply chains and the infrastructure of the country. They work 24/7. The ships come in, they have to be unloaded, and because there's trucks waiting and railroads waiting, and the ships have to get out because there's other ships waiting to pull in. So they're not like a 9 to 5. In the government of Canada, for example, where you can all go home at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and so that points to the essential nature of the ports. I've written about this and in the past, and why the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure of our country is so critical.
And are we going to see delays in the supply chain for different companies with this one-day strike, or can it be absorbed?
I don't think one day will really disrupt it. I think it's more of a signal that there's more to come. The Port of Montreal is the largest port for all of Eastern Canada. There's 2 critical ports in Canada. One's the Port of Vancouver, ships coming in from Asia, and of course the other is the Port of Montreal coming in from Europe and elsewhere. And so these goods, because we import so much, we import a third of our GDP. 1/3 of the totality of our economy is imported. And so, like every other modern economy, no economy is self-sufficient unless you're a very poor country like North Korea, which is self-sufficient and very, very poor. Developed modern economies have a lot of trade relationships. But what that means in plain English is that ports and airports and railroads and trucking are really, really essential to the smooth, efficient functioning of the economy.
And what are the concerns that the port workers have?
Well, I'm not sure of the exact details. I've been following it, and there is an argument over overtime, but I want to go larger because I've just finished a paper on strikes in the transportation sector, and the Parliament of Canada has legislated back 37 times from 1950 until now. And in the last several years, there's been 7 by my count, ministerial directives, which impose essentially mandatory or compulsory arbitration. What this reflects is that there's always been this uneasy tension in the transportation sector between, on the one hand, the right to strike, which everybody understands, Supreme Court of Canada ruled in 2015. But on the other hand, there's a recognition that this is a sui generis, a unique sector. This is not like buying potato chips at the grocery store where there's there's thousands of other grocery stores to go buy your potato chips or your carrots. It's the sector that is the backbone of the economy of Canada. And that's why Parliament's intervened so often. And I think, in my own view, I think that because this government has announced and said, look, we don't believe in back to work legislation, but it's essentially sent a signal to the unions in the transportation sector that they can have strikes or successful strikes with greater alacrity than in past times when there was a bipartisan consensus between Liberal and Conservative governments that they will not tolerate strikes in the transportation sector. And if they do exist, if they occur, they're legislated back to work.
Okay. Ian, thank you very much for your insight as always.
Thanks very much, Roger.